Smokey and the Bandit was a 1977 action comedy film with just a little bit of romance mixed into it. It starred Burt Reynolds as Bandit, Jerry Reed as Cletus Snow, or Snowman, Sally Fields as Carrie, or Frog, and Jackie Gleason as Sheriff BUFORD T. Justice. Bandit and Snowman are tasked with driving a truckload of contraband beer from Texarkana to Atlanta. Along the way, they run afoul of Smokey, who becomes obsessed with stopping them in this venture. This movie is the directorial debut of stuntman Hal Needham. Needham originally planned the film as a low-budget B-movie with a production cost of around $1 million, with Jerry Reed playing Bandit. It wasn't until Burt Reynolds read the script and said that he would love to star in it. That's when the film took aim at a more mainstream release than it originally was planned. Burt Reynolds was paid $1 million for his role in this movie. This was a quarter of the entire budget, but it was worth the investment. At the end of the year, Smokey and the Bandit was the second highest grossing film of 1977. And at that time, there was no star bigger than Burt Reynolds. When Smokey and the Bandit aired on network television, much of the language had to be altered and toned down a bit. For example, Justice's catchphrase, where he said, "some bitch," was altered to "scum bum." Most of the leads re-recorded their dialogue. However, Jackie Gleason didn't do that. Instead, they brought in Henry Corden, who was the voice of Fred Flintstone, and he dubbed the new dialogue in for BUFORD T. Justice. Now, a lot of this stuff is kind of based in real life, because there were a lot of people, and I remember this distinctly. When I was in college, there were people that made runs to Colorado to pick up Coors beer. But the truth of this movie comes from more angles than that. The character of Smokey, played by Jackie Gleason, was based on a real man. Yeah, there was really a cop named BUFORD T. Justice. He was a Florida highway patrolman known to Burt Reynolds' father. And remember, Burt Reynolds' father had been police chief of Riviera Beach in Florida. It's pretty amazing that this was Alfred Hitchcock's favorite movie. After a tribute screening of the movie Psycho at USC in the year 2000, Alfred Hitchcock's daughter, Patricia, set the record straight about this. She let everybody know that the master of suspense considered this Burt Reynolds chase flick his favorite movie. And his second-in-line favorite movie was the movie Benji. Hal Needham asked Jerry Reed to write a theme song for the film. A couple of hours later, he presented the song Eastbound and Down to Needham. With an acoustic guitar, Reed started to play it, and Needham immediately stopped him. Thinking that Needham didn't like it, Reed offered to rewrite the song. Needham told him, "Don't you dare change one note. If you do, I'll kill you." This song went on to become one of Jerry Reed's greatest hits. This movie is one of a handful of pictures that Burt Reynolds made with his 1970s girlfriend, Sally Field. In every movie they made together, Field played Reynolds' girlfriend. Along with this one, they appeared together in Hooper, Smokey and the Bandit 2, and The End in 1978. They used 3 Trans Am cars during the production of the movie. Director Hal Needham claims that those cars would barely run by the time the production was done. They'd completely wore them out. And Burt Reynolds says that a senior executive at Pontiac promised him a free Trans Am if the movie became a hit. It did, and the 1977 T-Top Trans Am became one of the hottest selling cars of the year. When the movie became a hit, Reynolds expected the executive to come through with the promise that he made. But the Trans Am never showed up. After a few months, Reynolds, who was afraid to seem like one of those pretentious stars looking for freebies, he finally called Pontiac As it turned out, the executive that had made that promise had retired, and the new executive refused to keep the promise that was made by the previous Pontiac executive. Now, while Hal Needham was in Georgia working with Burt Reynolds as a stunt double in the movie Gator, someone brought him some Coors from California to his hotel room. After he noticed that the maid kept stealing beers from the fridge, he remembered a Time magazine article from 1974 about how Coors was unavailable east of the Mississippi River because the beer was not pasteurized and needed constant refrigeration, and it couldn't legally be sold outside of 11 western and southwestern U.S. states, which made him realize that bootlegging Coors would make a good plot line for a movie. Sally Fields has stated that Burt Reynolds wanted her for the role of Carrie after being smitten with her for some time. Since her time on TV as Gidget in 1965, he was fascinated by her. She decided to take the role because she thought that it allowed her to be light and pretty, which was a departure from her previous role on television as a troubled girl named Sybil in 1976. It's kind of interesting that in the restaurant, Sheriff Justice orders a Diablo sandwich, which is like a Sloppy Joe, but it's spicier. There are some regional differences, but it's usually made like a Sloppy Joe with ground beef. The Sloppy Joe spices are replaced with taco spices, and the recipe might include hot sauce and sometimes canned corn and diced tomato. In some places, they introduce jalapenos into the mix, and then it's served on a hamburger bun like a regular Sloppy Joe. Now, if you think back to the time that this movie came out, this movie was not only responsible for the sale of Trans Ams going crazy, but it was also responsible for the sale of CB radios. That went off the charts too. This became a pastime for regular drivers, not just professional truckers. Sheriff BUFORD T. Justice drives a 1976 Pontiac Le Mans in the film. You'll see some notes in trivia banks where people think that he drove a Pontiac Bonneville, but he doesn't drive the Bonneville until the sequel, Smokey and the Bandit 2. Now, in most scenes of a movie, you will see a slate being clapped so that they can sync up the audio with the video. But in the movie scenes that were done in the Trans Am, it was not possible to use this slate to mark the beginning and the end of the scenes. The actors had to clap their hands instead to mark when a scene started and ended. The nickname Smokey is a citizen band radio slang for state patrol troopers because of their hats. They're also used by the U.S. Forestry Department, and the real name for them is called campaign hats. Later on, the term became a Smokey the Bear hat, and this was after the Forest Service adopted their use of it, and they had their mascot wearing one in 1944. Nicknames for other law enforcement officers that are used in a slang setting on CBs was a city kitty, and that was for a city police officer, or a county mountie, which was a county police officer or the sheriff's department. Now, Jackie Gleason was offered a percentage of the gross of the box office, or he could have a straight salary. Gleason took the straight salary, and this cost him millions because of the success of the film. Adding the Junior Justice character was Jackie Gleason's idea. He said, "I can't be in the car alone." He said, "I got to have somebody in there to play off of, so put someone in there with me." Now, Jackie Gleason always had an assistant, and this film was no different. And he spoke code to this assistant, and he and the assistant were the only ones that knew what he was talking about. One example of this is when he asked for a hamburger, that was really code for a glass of vodka. Jackie Gleason was known to turn the bottle up a little bit while on the set. Now, the scene where they crash into the ball game was almost a terrible nightmare. They narrowly missed having a serious accident on their hands. Unknown to the film crew, a groundskeeper had been watering grass on the field, and this caused the car to go out of control and slide the wrong way. It almost took out a whole bunch of extras in the movie. After this scene was shot, the whole cast was shaking. This could have turned into a real disaster. Now, Smokey and the Bandit was one of those sleeper hits. The film premiered in New York, where it performed badly. Then it opened just in the southern United States over the Memorial Day weekend, and it went crazy down there. It opened in 386 theaters, and it grossed $2.6 million initially. The worldwide gross is estimated at over $300 million. Burt Reynolds rated this film as the one that he most enjoyed and that he had the most fun making in his entire career. It's one of those that sticks out and lives in your mind forever. Thank you for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.